Good afternoon, everybody. It's my great pleasure this afternoon to introduce General Hodges, the head of the U.S. Army in Europe, who is here as part of the ongoing process of consultation and engagement between the United States government and the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. From the very first days after the Russian invasion of Crimea, the United States has worked arm in arm with the government of Ukraine to support the efforts that the Ukrainian people themselves are making to defend their sovereign territory, and in particular to advance the modernization of their government and institutions. Reform and modernization in the defense sector is perhaps one of the most important elements of that effort. And so General Hodges' visit today comes in that context, and I'm delighted he'll be able to spend a little bit of time with you, and want to underline here the enormous value that I place on our partnership with European Command, U.S. Army in Europe, and my gratitude for his visit today. Thank you, General.
Good afternoon. I'd like to make a brief opening statement, and then I look forward to your questions. I also would like to say how grateful I am to our ambassador and how proud I am of the U.S. ambassador here for his leadership. I'm very happy to be in Ukraine today as my first official visit as commander of United States Army Europe. I'd like to mention the great privilege I had to visit wounded Ukrainian soldiers today at Pechersk Military Hospital. I had the opportunity to meet some very brave young men who have given much in the service of their country, Ukraine. I also met very supportive family members and exceptional healthcare professionals who are working very hard to give these wounded soldiers the best possible health care. These families, the doctors, and the nurses are as important to Ukrainian security as are their soldiers. Today, I met with Ukrainian senior military leaders and U.S. Embassy personnel to gain a better understanding of the security situation and also the training requirements in areas where we, the United States Army in Europe, can help. I want to emphasize United States Army Europe support to Ukraine. President Putin's illegal annexation of Crimea and Russia's use of proxy forces in eastern Ukraine is unacceptable. Europe and the United States are united in this, as you can see from the EU sanctions that continue and from the unity of NATO coming out of the Wales Summit. As the ambassador said, I too am very impressed with the commitment of civilian and military leaders to reform, and I look forward to U.S. Army Europe supporting the training of Ukrainian security forces beginning this spring. Finally, I would like to read part of the statement from our President Obama, which he made last night in his annual State of the Union message. And I quote President Obama, "We're demonstrating the power of American strength and diplomacy. We're upholding the principle that bigger nations cannot bully the small by opposing Russian aggression and supporting Ukraine's democracy and reassuring our NATO allies." And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Колеги, задавайте, будь ласка, свої запитання, не забувайте представлятись.
Please ask your questions and don't forget to introduce yourselves.
General, is it possible to talk at this stage, when it comes to the situation in Donetsk and Lugansk, about a Russian invasion and direct engagement by the Russian army in the territory of Ukraine, or not yet? Thank you.
I think it is very clear from the capabilities that the proxies have used against Ukrainian security forces, the type of artillery, modern equipment, the amount of ammunition that has been used. It's irrefutable that they're getting direct support from Russia. The quality and the volume of UAVs, unmanned aerial systems or vehicles to provide intelligence to artillery, those are not the type of things you would find in a militia. They clearly are coming from a modern military force coming from Russia. The volume of ammunition is not something that a militia could create themselves or even capture. That has to be coming from somewhere else. When you look at the amount of Russian equipment that the proxies were using prior to the Minsk agreements, that amount has doubled beginning in December into the hundreds in terms of modern equipment. So it's very clear that there's direct help coming from Russia in this fight against Ukrainian forces.
Yeah, but there is a direct involvement of Russian soldiers or no?
I would leave it to the Ukrainian military forces to specify what they're finding in terms of Russian personnel and who they're encountering directly.
Question from Wall Street Journal.
General, from your perspective, do you think that Ukrainian army is well equipped and armed to counter the threats it's facing now? And what about further American support, maybe in terms of non-lethal weapons, besides the training efforts you mentioned today? Are there any other things under consideration? Thank you.
The most important asset that any army can have is quality men and women, quality leadership. I've been very impressed today with the leaders I met, from General Pushnikov and also General Kravchenko from the National Guard, and also civilian leadership. They are committed to reform and modernization. They have demonstrated that they are learning lessons from the combat. So already that's a very important aspect of a capable military force. The fact that even though the proxies have received so much ammunition and equipment from Russia, the fact that Ukrainian forces have managed to stop them is indicative of the courage and the talent of Ukrainian leaders and soldiers. I think there are some areas where we can help. I look forward to us doing that in the spring, helping with combat life-saving medical care for soldiers who are wounded. I think that we can help with protection from Russian artillery and protection from the jamming of communication systems. I think these are areas for sure where we'll be able to help.
Sir, Radio Free Europe, Yulia Drost. Don't you think that Russia's actions towards Ukraine are simply symmetric to what the West and the US in particular are doing, for example, in the Middle East, I mean, interfering? And the second question is, what will be your advice to Ukrainian militaries as for managing the border with Russia? Thank you.
I don't see any sort of a parallel between what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East. Ukraine is a sovereign country. There were agreements to which Russia is a signatory, and yet Russia has violated their own agreements, violating the border of a sovereign country. And I think that the overall security of Europe in Ukraine is a part of Europe. So the overall security and stability of Europe is the larger part of what's happening in Ukraine now. If one nation can come in and start changing the borders unilaterally of another country, that has implications for the rest of Europe. So the fact that all the nations of the EU have stuck together and the sanctions indicates such a unanimous, strong rejection of what Russia has done. So I think that's significantly different from what's happening in the Middle East. As far as the border between Ukraine and Russia, how that's managed, I think the Ukrainian government will have a plan for how they manage their border, so that we could resume so that Ukraine could resume a normal commerce trade between countries, as is normal throughout the rest of Europe.
Russian Foreign Minister Mr. Lavrov said today that there is no evidence of Russian invasion troops and weapons here in Ukraine. Does the United States, does your intelligence have any evidence, firm evidence that Russia passes weapons and military personnel here in Ukraine? And can you disclose this evidence, or at least confirm that you have such an evidence?
Of course, I would not share intelligence sources. It would be inappropriate to do so at this point. I'm confident that Ukrainian security forces will do that. Again, if you do not believe that Russia is providing direct military aid, equipment, ammunition, intelligence, and some of the equipment that's required that's being provided also requires technical assistance. If you don't believe that that's being provided by Russia, then you do not want to believe.
Colleagues, more questions?
Peter Landert, Associated Press. Speaking as a military man, you've spoken about the what you think has been the ability of the Ukrainian forces to hold back the line. But in the long term, do you see any prospects of Ukraine actually settling this matter victoriously, militarily, rather than through negotiations?
Well, first of all, the ultimate solution is going to be a political solution here, which is true for all military conflicts. Ultimately, you're trying to achieve a political objective. I think everyone would want Russia to be back in the normal community, the international community, to be a part of commerce and diplomacy and so on. Right now, Russia obviously is isolated. I think the effort to help reestablish Ukrainian sovereignty over its territory, use of military capability is only a part of it. There's a part of this which is economic and diplomatic, and a part of it is information. I mean, the flood of disinformation that comes from Russia is something that has to be countered with the truth, shining sunlight on the narrative, which is false, so that people can understand what really is at stake here.
Колеги, чи є ще запитання до нашого спікера?
Do you have any other questions?
General, thank you very much.
I would like to say thanks to all of you here from whatever source or media you may represent. What you do is so important to provide information to populations, to your readers or listeners. It is a very, very important part of democracy. So I appreciate what you do, and many of you take risks by going to places to try and cover a story. So thank you for that. Good evening.